From 2013 to 2015, we have an amazing 9 signs that all happen on appointed times. Isn't that what we're told to look for in Genesis? Isn't that the reason that God said He made the lights? For signs and appointments? So what happens when a sign lines up with an appointment? That means you need to watch. You need to pay attention. And here we have, amazingly, the very center of this is there's 4 blood moons, all on appointed times. This only happens 7 times every 2,000 years, and it will not happen again for 567 years. If things don't happen now, they're not going to happen. The last time this happened was when Israel got Jerusalem in their possession. There were 4 blood moons on appointed times. The time before that was when the Israeli nation had just finished fighting for its independence and defeated its enemies, and immediately there were 4 blood moons on appointed times. And the time before that, Columbus had just finished discovering America. 18 days after he returned to Spain, the first blood moon happened. As the word was spreading about the new continent he had discovered, 4 blood moons were giving the proclamation. Because a blood moon, it's either a warning or a proclamation. And so to have 4 of these, we better pay attention. Now there's always blood moons, but they're not always on appointed times. So we have not only the 4 blood moons, but it started off with a comet. A comet is a symbol of judgment. God told Job, He said, "Have you seen the treasuries of snow and the treasuries of hail that I've reserved for times of trouble, for the day of war?" Comets are not a good sign. And we have 4 blood moons, which is a warning, and it starts off with a comet. That's an extra exclamation mark on this whole sequence of events. So we had a comet Ison, on Hanukkah. As it made its perihelion around the sun, the closest point, it disintegrated in the Scorpion constellation. Very symbolic there. Then we had the first blood moon, April 15, 2014. Then at Pentecost, they discovered an asteroid 45 days earlier. They called it the Beast. It was as big as a soccer stadium. It came 3 lunar distances from the Earth, which seems pretty far away, but astronomically it's a close approach. It came 3.3 lunar distances from the Earth and made its closest approach at 9 a.m. Israeli time on Pentecost, the exact hour of Pentecost. Amazing, and sign on an appointed time. And it was called the Beast. Then we had another blood moon, October the 8th, at Sukkot, or Tabernacles. Then, in 2015, the biblical New Year, to have a solar eclipse at the beginning of a biblical New Year, that's like a warning. And not only is this the beginning of a biblical New Year, it's a beginning of a biblical 7-year cycle. So that's an extra emphasis there. When it starts out with a solar eclipse, that's something to take note. And then we had April 4th, again, on unleavened bread, we had a blood moon. Pentecost again, what do we have? Saturn represents Satan, makes its closest approach on the eve of Pentecost. Same thing as the first Pentecost in 2014, the Beast. Very interesting. Then, as we speak, we have 2 signs left. We have trumpets and tabernacles, or Sukkot. Those are the 2 to look for. So we have a lot of things happening. I think God is trying to get our attention. The signs have already begun. As Yeshua said, now there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and the stars. Now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws nigh. Now, in the context of this verse, he's talking about after Jerusalem was in Israeli possession, and there were 4 blood moons then. But this is the next time after that. And there won't be another time for 567 years. I believe this is the time he's talking about to look for. And he mentions signs in the sun first. Anytime God gives an order, the first one is always important. So The next appointed time, Yom Teruah, September 13th, there's going to be a partial solar eclipse. Should take particular note. It's a sign in the sun. We should be watching, especially on that one. Now, are we supposed to look for fearful signs? Because that's what a lot of people are going to do. They're going to wait until they see an obvious sign, like this verse. And there'll be fearful sights and great signs from heaven. This is the same verse where Yeshua is talking about signs. A lot of people are going to wait, and then they'll wake up. Then they'll take notice. But you don't want to do that. You don't want to wait till you see, like this War of the Worlds poster from 2005, where there's a planet Mars hanging so close to the Earth you can almost touch it, and you're just standing there paralyzed in fear. If you wait that long, it's too late. It's too late. Why? Because Yeshua said it'll be business as usual for the people. He says, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise, as it was in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. You see in both of these examples, business as usual. There's nothing to hinder, to paralyze them in fear until the day that the righteous are taken out. Then the signs become obvious. Then it's very fearful. So if you wait till you see that, it's too late. The signs are subtle, and you have to look for them. They're not so obvious, and you can miss them. That's why we need to be watching. Why do you think Yeshua said, watch and pray? So it's not going to be so obvious. If you're not watching, you'll miss it. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. David mentions an astounding thing here. He says the heavens are declaring the glory. He says their line has gone out throughout all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Every voice, every language sees it. Pay attention to these last two lines, because we'll see them in just a minute. When we see Paul, he refers to this very verse in an amazing revelation. What did Paul say? For whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him in whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach unless they're sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the gospel of peace, who bring glad tidings of good things. Paul is talking to the Romans, and he's seemingly saying a preacher needs to be sent. And he asks a question, how shall they believe in him in whom they have not heard? Seemingly he's saying a preacher has to be sent for them to hear. But look at what he says. Just a few verses later, he answers his question, how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? Look at this amazing statement. But I say, have they not heard? Yes, indeed. Their sound has gone out to all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. He's quoting from the same Psalm 19 that we just saw David say. The same psalm that said the heavens declare the glory of God. Paul is saying they have heard because the heavens have preached the gospel. The heavens have declared the glory. They have heard. He says, yes, they have. That is amazing. Even if a preacher is not sent, they're accountable. The heavens are declaring the glory. We need to be looking and seeing what these heavens, what is being shown us. This image appeared in January 2014, NASA released it. It's called the Hand of God. And it's a pulsar wind nebula from a star that exploded in a supernova. And the star was about at the white point on the palm of the hand. And it's spinning at 7 times per second, an incredible rate. And so at 7 times per second, it's spewing out all these particles still. And these particles are interacting, releasing these X-rays at different frequencies. And so they've known about this Hand of God earlier, and they've imaged it in 2009 at a couple of frequencies, and they had just re-imaged it at a different higher frequency, and they're re-releasing this, showing the enhanced image of the hand. But what is interesting, this is right before the first blood moon that they release it, just a couple of months before. I think that's a sign. I think it's showing this is the hand of God. These signs that we're seeing now, it's not the same as just any other time. This is God's hand on this. This hand of God is in the Circinus or compass constellation. And it's a little bitty constellation you see in red. It's in the southern hemisphere. You can't see it from the northern hemisphere. There's a light haze that goes across the page, the first bottom third of the page, and that's the horizon. And this program allows you to turn off the terrain of the earth, and you act like you're seeing through the earth. And so that's what we're doing, because you cannot see this from the northern hemisphere. But you can see the upper 2/3 of the picture. There's Virgo, there's Libra, there's Scorpion, there's Sagittarius. That's where the sun, moon, and stars go. So this little bitty constellation was discovered in 1756. It's a modern constellation. And with this Hand of God was already in the constellation, waiting for man to discover it and name it. And even though it's modern, it has a significance. Why? Consider this verse. When he prepared the heavens, wisdom was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth. He put a compass on the face of the depth. His hand was on the compass. And here's a compass constellation where the hand of God is. God's signs in the heaven are continual, and even if it's a modern constellation, there's a meaning to it. The heavens are declaring the glory of God. Another way we can find out about what do the heavens mean, and this is the primary way, you got to go to the Creator. If you can find out what the Creator said about something, then you know. And there is an amazing verse in the oldest book of the Bible, the book of Job. God is talking to Job, and he's reprimanding him. And he's saying, can you bind the bands of the Pleiades, or loosen the cords of Orion? Can you bring out the constellations in their season, or can you guide the bear with his sons? Job had earlier made a statement about God, and he mentioned these same constellations, and he mentioned the bear first in reverse order. He mentioned the bear, and then he mentioned Orion, and then he mentioned what's called the Pleiades. Now this is the Pleiades stands for the seven sisters in Greek mythology, but the Hebrew word is chema. It means cluster of jewels. So God is listing this first. Job had mentioned it last. And whenever God has a sequential order, there's always a reason what he's saying first. You should always take note of that. And we can learn something from what he told Job. So what is the Pleiades? Well, it's a cluster of thousands of stars, but it's known as the seven sisters. But there's at least 5 of them that are very visible, and most people can see 5 or 6 of them, but up to 12 can be visible with the naked eye. So this cluster is in a cloud of gas, unlike any other constellation or cluster. Totally unusual that this gas surrounds all of these stars over such a vast area, and that diffuses the light, and it makes it have a blue hue to it. And he said it's called cluster of jewels in Hebrew. Well, it looks like a cluster of sapphire stones, of blue sapphire stones. And there you notice there's streaks in this. The magnetic fields have aligned the particles in the gas into streaks. So when God didn't really say bind the bands of Pleiades in Hebrew, it's more like, can you tie the laces? Can you tie the laces of the cluster of jewels? And of course, no, Job probably didn't even know there were any laces without a telescope. If we look at a close-up from the Hubble Space Telescope, you can see that blue sapphire color, and you can still see some streaks here. But there's a couple of amazing scriptures that give us an insight into what does this constellation mean that God mentions first. And above the firmament over their heads was the likeness of a throne, in appearance like a sapphire stone. Ezekiel is mentioning a throne above the firmament that looks like a sapphire, the same color as this chema, the cluster of jewels. Another verse in Exodus, and they saw the God of Israel, and there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of sapphire stone, and it was like the very heavens in its clarity. Again, God's throne is a sapphire stone. Under his feet are sapphire stones. God must really like the sapphire. And here we have the only constellation, or the only cluster, that is this color of a sapphire, just like God's throne. Maybe there's something to it. Let's look at what Daniel said. His throne was a fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. Daniel tells us his throne has wheels. So let's take a zoom out on this Hubble picture, and we see the 5 main stars of this constellation. It looks like a chair turned sideways. If you connect the dots, or like a throne, just tilted sideways. It's shaped like a throne. And then if you look at the upper right-hand corner, the 3 next brightest stars, those are like wheels, or like a rocking chair. So here we have a constellation. It's mentioned first by God. There's something important about it. I think it's the first constellation he created. It's the same color as his throne. It's the same shape as his throne. I think, more than anything else, this constellation symbolizes the throne of God. And it's currently in the Taurus the Bull constellation. God doesn't mention the bull. He only mentions this little constellation. But I believe that this symbolizes God's throne and his power. I think we're beginning to see a little bit of the true intent of the creation. And what is 180 degrees from God's throne? Here we have a scorpion, and you can see a dark horse. There's an outline right above it. It's called the Dark Horse Nebula, and it looks just like an eerie silhouette of a prancing horse. A dark horse. It doesn't look good. And it's in a constellation called Ophiuchus. This is the only part of the sky where you have 2 constellations sharing the ecliptic. That's the path that the sun and the moon and the stars go on. All the others, 1 constellation is there. Here you have 2 of them. The Scorpion is on the bottom part. Ophiuchus is on the upper part. And right in between those 2, the sun and moon stars go. What could be the significance of this group in the sky? Let's consider what Yeshua said. Behold, I give you the authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Serpents and scorpions represent the power of the enemy. Let's take a look again. You have a scorpion. Ophiuchus, he's the serpent handler. He's depicted as a man like a witch doctor holding a snake, a big snake. That snake he's holding is called Serpens, the constellation Serpens. And he's using that to do magical stuff. So you have a serpent in here. You have a scorpion here. You've got a dark horse. If you look at the dark horse's front leg, it goes down to Antares in the scorpion. That's called the Dark River Nebula. All the planets, the sun and the moon, every time they go by, they have to cross over that dark river. It's like an evil dark river that they got to pay a toll to pass over. And underneath the dark horse, there's a small nebula called the Snake Nebula. So this region of the sky, it's got a serpent, it's got a serpent handler, it's got a scorpion, it's got a dark horse, it's got a dark river, and it's got a snake nebula. More than anything else, this must represent the power of the enemy, and it is exactly 180 degrees across from God's throne in the galaxies. So amazingly, I think we're beginning to see a little bit of a picture of what these constellations stand for and why God created them. Here's a picture from Hawaii's Mauna Kea volcano. It's one of the best places on Earth to view the stars. There's a lot of observatories here, and it's above the clouds. But what's amazing is you can see the dark horse very prominent. You can see it running down to Antares there, and you can see the clouds. It's above the clouds here. On the left side, there's a golden glow from the city below, and you go towards the right, there's an orange glow. That's from a volcano, and you go to the far right, and there's the moon. And right in the middle, the photographer is taking a self-portrait of himself. But a very beautiful picture, a lot of stuff in it, but that dark horse sure stands out, and it'll come into play later on. And here's a close-up of the same picture of the dark horse. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations, for you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you should be brought down to hell, to the lowest depths of the pit. Here is an amazing recorded statement that Lucifer, what he said. He said he would ascend and he would go on the farthest sides of the north. Let's look at how God depicted the symbolic constellation to symbolize Lucifer. This is a twisted serpent. Today it's known as Draco the dragon. Historically, as Job knew it, it's a twisted serpent. It was depicted as a snake with a dragon's head. This is an 1825 card from Britain, and what it is, it's designed to. It's got stars with holes in it in the card, and you're supposed to hold it up to a candle, and a light's going to shine through those holes and project onto the wall, and you'll see what the constellation looks like. And so it shows, not only does it show Draco, but it shows Ursa Minor. That's the little bear, otherwise known as the Little Dipper. And if you look at the end of the Little Dipper, the bear's tail, that's Polaris. That's the North Star. So you see that the twisted serpent, he's got on three sides of the North Star. He looks like he's trying to be around the sides of the north. And in Job's time, 5,000 years ago, if you go from the bear's nose straight over to the left, there's Thuban. That was the North Star back in Job's time. At that time, the serpent did occupy the sides of the north. So the Lord God said to the serpent, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Here we have a statement made to the serpent, God saying what he's going to do. Well, guess what? He had already said it in the heavens. Before he even told this to the serpent, he had already said it. The heavens were already declaring the glory. Look at what the serpent looks like. This is its motion in a 24-hour period. It goes around and around the North Star. You're seeing this stationary. Look at the head of the serpent. It's getting smashed every single day. Just as God said, for 6 hours every day, his head gets bruised. The word really means crushed. God had shown in the heavens what he was going to do to the serpent before man was even created. The stars were created on day 4. Man didn't come around till day 6. He hadn't even been created. He hadn't fallen. And yet God already had that serpent in the sky getting his head smashed, saying, "This is what I'm going to do." Simply amazing. The heavens are declaring the glory of God. This is Jupiter. Jupiter has historically been depicted to represent the supreme deity of a culture. To the Greeks, it was Zeus. To the Romans, it was Jupiter. To the Babylonians, it was Marduk. I think it should represent Yeshua, the Messiah. And the most prominent thing about this is the stripes. If you look, you see these bands going across. No other planet has this configuration. And it's called the stormy planet because these are storms, very very turbulent, and they're going across. What do we know about the Messiah? Who himself bore our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, having died to sins, might live for righteousness. By whose stripes you were healed. Yeshua had stripes. And this word in Greek is molops, which means a wound that trickles with blood. Take a look at this video from 1979, the Voyager spacecraft, as it passed by Jupiter. You can easily see these stripes going different directions, like wounds trickling with blood. And you see the great red spot right below. Look at that. No other planet is like this. No other planet has all of these bands going different direction. Those are the stripes. If we map this out on a cylinder, we can see that it looks like wounds trickling with blood, even in a more prominent way. And here's a motion picture of it mapped out onto a cylinder. It looks like blood flowing through capillaries. Simply amazing. The wounds trickling with blood are right here, symbolic of the Messiah who had many stripes. Another thing that Yeshua had, one of the soldiers pierced Yeshua's side with a spear, and immediately blood and water came out. He had a pierced side. What does Jupiter have? It has a great red spot on the side. No other planet has such a thing. This is a giant storm. This is so big you could put the Earth inside this several times over. All the other planets that have storms are on the poles. This is on the side. No other planet has this. And look at this. It's got a red inside the pierce, and it's got white, like blood and water. It's a high-pressure system. It's going counterclockwise, but it's in the southern hemisphere, so it's a high pressure. It's not like our low-pressure hurricanes that we know of. So it's flowing out, just like a pierced wound would come out with blood and water. And if we'll notice in a video that this red blood is going to flow into the upper blood stripe, and the white water is going to flow into the bottom water stripe. Look at this amazing video. Another close-up from Voyager 1. Here we have the great red spot, and you just look and see the flow. Part of it's flowing into the red upper stripe, and part of it's going into the white water stripe. It has a pierced side, just like the Messiah. The heavens are declaring the glory of God. Other generations didn't see this close. And now that we found out, Jupiter is a perfect example of the Messiah. Amazing. And the soldiers, having woven a crown from thorns, placed it on his head, and they put a purple cloak on him. Then Yeshua came outside, wearing the thorny crown and the purple cloak. And Pilate said to them, Behold the man. So now we know two more aspects of the Messiah. He has a crown and a cloak. Look at this amazing picture. It's an ultraviolet image from Hubble of Jupiter's North Pole, and this is the auroral crown. An aurora is when electrons are excited and they go up into the upper atmosphere and excite the gases, and they give off different colors. It's a huge aurora, but look how it's lopsided. It's like twisted, just like Yeshua's crown was all twisted. It's not pretty. It looks like it has thorns even. It's prickling things sticking out. It's very similar. It's lopsided and thorny, just like Yeshua's crown. And it may not be purple, but I see a dark blue cloak. So very similar to Yeshua. Jupiter has a crown and a blue cloak. Another thing Jupiter has is rings. It wasn't until 1979 that we even knew it had rings. These rings are made out of rocks. They're very faint. They don't reflect light, unlike Saturn, which has icy rings that are very visible. These rings are hard to see. And there's also a fine dust that goes in from the rings to the planet called a halo. It's actually called a halo. Isn't that fitting for a Messiah to have a halo? But why would it have these rings that we didn't even know they had it? Didn't even know it had it. Well, consider this verse. Messiah Yeshua, though he was in the form of God, he did not regard equality with God something to be possessed by force. On the contrary, he emptied himself, in that he took the form of a slave by becoming like human beings are. And when he appeared as a human being, he humbled himself still more by becoming obedient even to death. Death on a stake as a criminal. I like this complete Jewish Bible translation. It says not only did he humbled himself still more. That's what the rings stand for. Humility. It shows the humility of the Messiah. He's not all bold and brash. His rings, he's not showing them off. But he has 3 rings, and he has a halo. Isn't that amazing? Everything about Jupiter points to Yeshua. He's got the stripes, the spot on the side, the crown, the cloak, the rings, and the halo. It's the 5th planet out from the sun. 5 is the number of grace. It couldn't be any more clear. Yeshua is representative of the Supreme Deity. Like historically it is, but this Supreme Deity is Yeshua. He's the one it really represents. Amazing. Well, let's take a look at the 2nd largest planet. What do you think that represents? Saturn is the most majestic. Here's a beautiful picture. The Cassini spacecraft flew over the planet, and you can see the beautiful rings, you can see the golden color, and you can even see a hexagon right on the North Pole. This is its famous hallmark that Saturn has. Look at the clarity of that hexagon. No other planet has such a feature. What do you think Saturn represents? Let's take a look at a scripture. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. The sardius, topaz, and diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald with gold. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I laid you before kings, that they might gaze at you. Here we see a description of Satan. He has every precious stone, 9 stones. He's covered with gold. He says his heart was lifted up because of his beauty. He had beauty and he had splendor. What does Saturn have? It has beauty and splendor. But look at this part where it says he's with gold. He was covered with not only the 9 stones, but with gold. There's no other planet that's gold like Saturn. And when the sun is directly on it, it's very gold. Covered with gold. What else does Saturn have? Look at this hexagon on its north pole. Now this hexagon has been enhanced with false colors to show the details. But that's representative of the 9 stones, the precious cut stones that Satan had. Isn't that amazing? No other planet has a feature like this. No other planet is gold. No other planet is majestic with the rings. Look at these rings. Gorgeous. The most beautiful. Lucifer was the most beautiful. And in this picture, if you the little white dot you see up at the top, that's Venus. It's got gorgeous rings. And here's a picture looking as it eclipsed the sun in 2013. And it shows the beautiful rings and the gold color. It's called the day the Earth smiled. And the reason it's called that is because this is only the 3rd time that the Earth has been photographed from the outer solar system. And if we zoom in, we can see the Earth right here with a moon There's the earth and the moon. Amazing picture. The heavens are declaring the glory of God.